Hello, Felix from Nintendo Life here, and today we're here to review LEGO Bricktales for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this review was written by the stupendous Mitch Vogel and converted into video by me. Though the late 90s and early 2000s saw a variety of LEGO video games released across all genres, the launch of LEGO Star Wars really kicked off a 30-plus game run of co-op action platformers based around the ever-so-popular LEGO IP that is still going strong today. It's a formula that has proven to have worked well and evolved somewhat over the years, but it's tough to deny that the gameplay hasn't gotten a bit stale with time. Luckily, LEGO, the company, has lately been experimenting more with breaking away from this tired formula with smaller titles like LEGO Builder's Journey that is more creative in scope. And the latest of these is LEGO Bricktales, a puzzle-focused, slower-paced release that demands more of the player's creativity and problem-solving skills. It's a little rough around the edges, but the gameplay is solid and definitely worth checking out. In this game, you play the role of a minifig visiting your eccentric inventor grandpa. He's finally managed to successfully build a portal that can take you to other worlds, but unfortunately he was so preoccupied with his work that he forgot to clean up the messy amusement park where his lab was based, and to top that, the landlord has promised she'll seize the land if it isn't cleaned up by the end of today. So what is the grandpa going to do? Well, lucky for him, a helpful little robot named Rusty comes in to save the day and builds a machine to clean up the park in time. There is a catch though. This machine needs power and it runs on happiness crystals, which are sourced from grateful people. So to help out, you thus take the little robot under your arm and go through this machine that your grandpa's invented to help out folks and gather these happiness crystals. The gameplay of this game could best be described as a mixture of several games: Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Picross 3D, Bridge Constructor, which makes sense since this was created by Bridge Constructor's developer Clockstone, and just sprinkle a little bit of Metroidvania in there for good measure. This may sound odd, but it all comes together quite well to make a relaxing and engaging puzzling experience. After you use the portal to travel into a new biome, you're faced with a diorama-esque level that your character will explore. There are multiple dioramas to explore in a given biome, and each is packed with treasure chests full of brief environmental puzzles that open up new routes and secrets. Though progression through each biome for this story is relatively linear, you'll need to use special items and abilities to unlock every side path and collect all the treasure. Some of these are obtained in the biome itself, but you'll sometimes need to backtrack later once you've gained certain abilities in later biomes. These treasure chests contain things like more cosmetic items to deck out your character, special bricks you use to add flair to your builds, or bananas that you use as a currency to pay a ghost shopkeeper for even more cosmetics. Yeah. It's not very hard to find everything in a given biome, but we appreciate how you're often prodded to check out these dioramas from all angles to find hidden rooms or switches that are smartly obscured. In each biome, you'll have a few people who you need to help for the story, such as saving a crew that has just been in a plane crash to building this bazaar in the desert. And this is where most of the building gameplay comes in. At various points, you'll come across an obstacle such as a river you'll need to cross or a cat in need of a scratching tree, and you'll be asked to build something for these occasions. This will then take you to a separate screen where you're then given a limited number of bricks and you have to build a stable construct that meets the certain criteria. You can be as creative and offbeat as you like in what you build and how you build it. The only thing that matters is that these buildings meet the certain requirements. Before you can progress, your work has to pass, a stress test where a robot runs across what you've built to test balance and sturdiness. Given that this is a kids-friendly LEGO game, you don't normally need a civil engineering degree to produce a workable solution, though there are some puzzles that will make you think a bit before you finally land something that doesn't fall apart. The building aspect of the gameplay proved to be relaxing and quite rewarding when you finally get something that works, but one large downside here is how it controls. Maneuvering bricks around in a 3D space to place them in specific configurations is quite a bear to navigate via controller and never feels natural. The best way to describe it is that it kind of feels like you're using a claw machine to put together Lego pieces. For example, you'll try to slot one piece between two you've already placed, and it'll keep jumping just to one side or another. Or it'll look like a piece is in place, only for you to realize that the camera perspective was off and it isn't even connected to anything else. In handheld mode, you do have touch controls, which feel a little easier to manage, but it is abundantly clear that this building was designed for mouse interface. You do get used to its quirks with time, and most pieces fall into place after only a little bit of fussing around, though we'd wish that it felt more intuitive considering how integral this mechanic is to the whole gameplay loop. Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts proved many years ago that it is entirely possible to build a satisfying creator interface around a gamepad. Clockstone's efforts here functional well enough, but it feels nowhere near as fun or simple as just putting together Lego pieces with your hands. As for presentation, LEGO Bricktales actually does a great job of recreating the plasticky and toy-like design of real Lego pieces, while including some creative video game flair. For example, the smoke that comes out of your jetpack will shoot out as these red studs that are gradually replaced with darker shades of red and finally black. It appears that everything actually sticks to real-life LEGO limitations too, so you could feasibly recreate any of these dioramas here in your living room if you had all the necessary pieces. The drawback to this semi-realism, of course, is that the Switch's hardware just isn't quite up to the task. There are fleeting moments where it seems like this game is running at a perfect 60 FPS, but we noted many instances of sharp, sustained drops into the sub-30 FPS territory. Guiding your character around in these dioramas does sometimes look like stop motion, and that is not in a good way. Worse yet, there are moments where the building screen itself seems to struggle. Sometimes there's a pause for a few seconds after you select a piece, while the engine catches up with the interface for all the tools that let you manipulate that piece. Though touch controls is a nice bonus for Switch, these performance issues alone are enough for us to recommend you pick up LEGO Bricktales on another platform if you have the option. As for the music, we especially appreciated the chill soundtrack, which contains a collection of relaxing tunes that provide just the right amount of auditory texture for play sessions. While you're brainstorming on how you want to design a zipline, the soundtrack isn't getting in your way with obnoxious and overly upbeat tracks. But it provides a nice background that is better than uncomfortable silence. You probably won't remember much of the soundtrack, but it is great at providing the vibes. In conclusion, LEGO Bricktales isn't perfect, but it offers a refreshingly unique experience relative to the lineage of action platformers based on the licensed IP we've been getting for nearly 2 decades now. We sincerely appreciated the focus on low stress-building puzzles that encourage and reward creative solutions. It's the kind of game that you just take your own pace with and lose yourself for a bit to the relaxing tunes and simple act of building. It is a shame then that it is these awkward controls that hamper your creativity and hold it back from greatness. Couple that with performance issues on Switch, and we'd recommend playing this on PC if you can. Still, Bricktales is the closest thing in years that a LEGO video game has gotten to the actual feeling of playing with LEGO, and those of you who appreciate the famous toy will definitely have something to love here. We here at Nintendo Live give LEGO Bricktales on the Nintendo Switch a 6 out of 10. And now with the review done, it's time for Felix's personal thoughts. Now, I was quite excited for this game when it was announced, because yeah, I finally get to play with LEGO in a video game, but the execution is just, well, very lackluster in my opinion. Normally I have a lot of good stuff to say here at the end, but this time it will be mostly negative. Controls are the first thing. They are just awful. I don't know how you mess up the controls this bad, but it just shows how little care was put into this port to Switch. It is clearly meant to be played with mouse, and if I was playing it that way, I think I would have had a much better time with this game. If you want an example on how to do a Switch port, look at Return to Monkey Island. They just changed the whole control scheme to make it work on Switch compared to PC, and boy was that appreciated. It just gave me a good appreciation of how much goes into good game design, since so much was wrong with this game. First off, the game just doesn't give you enough instructions. Yeah, you get the basic tutorial at the start, but then you just get a lot of pieces each time that you have to try and put together, and there's no teaching of certain techniques and anything to really help you improve, so you just have to try your best, and if you aren't really skilled at building Legos in the real world, well, you're gonna struggle here. Many times where the screen with all the pieces popped up, I was so overwhelmed because I had no idea how to do it, and with these awful controls it was even more intimidating to start the challenge. The game also has very little payoff for the long time you take to build these things. You spend maybe 30 minutes sometimes building one creation, and then you just see it for 5 seconds in a little animation and then you move on. It doesn't really serve a purpose, it's just so you can get from point A to point B. So sometimes you just think, it doesn't matter how good this creation looks, because in the end you'll only be looking at it for a couple of seconds. It's like they got so fixated on the idea of, hey, let's make the actual building process of Lego into a video game that they forgot to check if it was even fun. I will say that the touch controls are much more intuitive, and if you're planning to play it on Switch, do it with touch controls, but even still, it's just a bit clunky and doesn't represent the fun you can have of actual building Legos. There must have been something better they could have done, a way that it has a smarter way of predicting where you want to place those blocks, because as Mitch says in the review, you think a brick is at one position but in reality it is in another. It might have something to do with the lighting. It's hard to describe, and it just showcases how much we take for granted when we have good game design. Now, with all the bad out of the way, there's actually some good, because outside of the building, this game is actually quite fun. The actual structures and dioramas are really well crafted and sometimes gorgeous to look at, though it is weird that the camera is static in these environments, adding to some awkward sections. I would appreciate it if I could, move the camera around, but that would maybe take the fun out of finding certain, hidden collectibles, because then it would be very easy to find those. I don't know, but it just seems like a missed opportunity. If I have to sum up, this game is much more for experienced builders and not so much for newcomers, because if you know how to build Lego, I think this game is really fun, but with the lack of instructions this game gives you, it is just more intimidating than fun. But that was everything. Sorry for the negativity, but I just wanted to get my actual thoughts of the game, so you had that going in if you wanted to buy this or not. But yeah, stay safe and I'll see you in the next one. Felix from Nintendo Life, out.